What's up, guys? Brady Fugel here. Doing something a little bit different today. Today I have a guest on my channel, Max from his channel Metal Planet. Him and I have been actually collaborators for a while now, but my first ever collaboration on YouTube was with Max. We did little clips on each other's Linkin Park reviews, and we decided to collab again. And the year's almost half over, right? Why not talk about our album of the year so far? For me, I know there's been a lot of candidates for sure. There was a few records that I gave some very highly positive reviews about. I will obviously elaborate on my album of the year, but yeah, these are our albums of the year so far. Max, first of all, thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad you wanted to come on for this. So tell me, what is your album of the year so far?
Yeah, there's been many albums I have liked so far. For example, the new Cryptic Shift and Spire Records, for example, I really like those. But there is one in particular that I have enjoyed even more, and that is Dream Crush by Mole. This is a band I discovered actually while working on a video for my channel. I had never heard of this band before. I read on the internet and found out that this band is a black gaze formation. And after that, I listened to a couple of tracks from the album before the release date. And after listening to the whole thing, I pretty much fell in love with that album. Um, so this is a black gaze record. I'm assuming many people in your audience probably know what black gaze is.
Yeah.
If some people don't know, it's pretty much a blend of black metal and shoegaze. And you often have the dreamy, ethereal soundscape of shoegaze that kind of tie everything together.
Mhm.
On this specific record, the guitars lean more into the shoegaze and alternative rock side, while many of the vocals lean more into the black metal territory. And on the flip side of this, you also have clean vocals as well, and the metal guitars also. So it's a kind of a yin and yang dynamic in this album, contrast between light and dark that is present in many black gaze records. Um,
Yeah.
um, and there is darkness in that album for sure because of the harsh vocals and some of the heavy riffs. And the light aspect is a kind of hard to describe, a kind of uplifting vibe that is hard to describe.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Yeah.
And uh, it can be weird to say that about a metal album, but for me at least, it works really well in that album.
Yeah.
Um,
A lot of black gaze, I think, kind of has that same mood to it, where it's a little dark, but it's uplifting at the same time. It's got the soundscapes and the textures and all those layers. And I listened to that record as well a few times. You're not the only one actually who I think has referred to it as album of the year so far. Some of my other YouTube collaborators, I know Hector, the children on the couch. He was a big fan of this record, so. Black gaze for me, it's not quite a genre that I've fully been able to grasp onto and fully get into. I see the appeal, but I don't know. For me, I think it's just I don't know. It's just a genre that I've struggled with. I don't dislike it, or I would never say it's bad, but it's been a difficult genre for me to get into. However, I did recognize some pretty bright moments on this record when I listened to it because I initially dismissed it as a black gaze record, a record from a genre that I'm not really into. And then I had heard, I think you had told me, I think, and Hector had told me, and maybe others, that it was like their favorite album of the year. Like it was such a good record. So I listened to it, and I've only listened to it a couple times, but I did like it. It showed some really bright moments, and in its mood, like you said, I do think that was a good at least highlight from the record. And there were certain songs on there where it was maybe departing a little bit from the black gaze sound, where there was maybe some death metal coming in here, or some with more of the clean vocal parts, maybe a more accessible metal type of style here and there. It still managed to do a lot despite being under that black gaze umbrella. I'm curious, were there any certain songs on the record that really jumped out to you? Like, do you have highlights on the record as far as certain songs?
Yes, definitely. There's this song, Garland. Uh, really like those melodies in that track. For some reason, the melodies remind me a bit of the melodies that you could hear in the DLO Effect album, for example. And I really like that type of melodies. Uh, really like that song.
Mhm.
There is also the last track in the album that I've liked a lot, Crush.
Yeah. Okay.
This one is also a highlight for me.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, before we move on to my album of the year, did you have any other closing thoughts you wanted to give on Dream Crush, or otherwise we can move on? But did you have any final thoughts of any kind that you wanted to add?
Yeah, for me, this album is great for the vocal performance. I think the singer is really great at both the harsh vocals and clean vocals. He excels at both, and I find both vocal style to be as engaging as the other in that album. And I think that this album really succeeds because it can appeal to fans of more mainstream music, mainstream rock music, while at the same time appealing to fans of underground metal,
Mhm.
underground black metal. So the pool of fan this album can reach is pretty wide, and there is a balance. The album doesn't sacrifice one for the other. It manages to appeal to both at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, a really great album for me at least. I think this album will end up in many top albums lists for 2026.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Mhm.
Um, and this was the first album for the band for Nuclear Blast. I don't know who found and signed the band for the label, but I think it's a nice addition to the Nuclear Blast roster. So yeah,
Yeah.
those are pretty much my thoughts for this one.
For sure. Yeah, awesome and good final thoughts. Yeah, it's I could definitely see this album being like a good gateway into black gaze and into black metal. I think it's a good maybe transition album because like you said it has its more accessible moments. It has definitely that entrancing atmosphere, which would be a big draw to me. And yeah, definitely a great record even if I'm not vibing with it personally. Like I definitely see the appeal and judging by what you have said and what others have said, like I think like you said this will be an album of the year candidate for a lot of metalheads, especially extreme metal fans. So and I'm happy for this band. You know, they're a younger band. I'm not sure if this is was this their second album maybe. I know they don't have many albums, but I'm happy for them because you know it's getting a great response. So moving on to my album of the year now. This ironically it was also this is also a band much like Mole was with you where I had never listened to them before. I got into them on this record, which is always something awesome when you discover a band that you can really like, get into and like do that deep dive with. And for me, that was Carnival with their album In Verses. Uh, like it just, I think this record at the time it dropped, for one, the reason why I'm picking it as my album of the year so far is because I definitely think more than any others, this will be the record that like I'm gonna listen in the future. I'll listen back on this record and it'll take me back to 2026. So far, and that's usually what helps me decide album of the year. What will I remember 2026 most by musically? And this album has got to be it for me. It came out in I think it was late January, which was a time where I kind of had a period of uncertainty going on, I think was a good way of putting it. And the sound of this record and especially the lyrics and just everything about this record really spoke to me and jumped out at me. And it ended up being it's been my go-to soundtrack pretty much for the entire first half of the year so far. I can name, I mean, every song on here. The only track I haven't came back to a whole lot is the song Opal. But aside from that, like every song has had a constant rotation for me. Um, Before I definitely would like to name a few songs, and I will. Max, I'm curious. You did listen to this album, right? You're familiar with it. Were you a fan of it?
Was the same thing for me. I pretty much, I wouldn't say I discovered the band with this album. I had listened to a few tracks from this band before, but never listened to a full album from start to finish. That was the first time I did. And honestly, I really like that record also. it's probably a top five for 2026 for me at least. I really enjoyed this one, and just like the mall record, I think that this one also has a broad audience. It can appeal to fans of prog rock and prog metal at the same time.
Mhm.
And some fans sometimes compare the singing a bit to the singer of Tool.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
Yeah,
a little bit.
so uh, I think that that Tool comparison sometimes can bring more fans to that band. Fans who like Tool will start try checking this band.
Hmm.
As a whole, I really like that album also.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Tool. Like you nailed it when you said this is also a band that I think has a wide potential for an audience. They like they're somewhat of a melting pot almost between like a more proggy band like Tool, but a more accessible band like maybe a Chevelle. Because several of the songs on this record have really good choruses. Which I mean, Tool has good choruses too, but these choruses sound like a lot more straightforward and streamlined, despite maybe the fact that there's still some interesting musical ideas going on underneath it. So that's a big compliment I have for the record right away. Just the choruses on here, but my favorite element on here is just the emotional weight of a lot of these tracks. For this record, only for having been out a few months, it has already had like a pretty profound effect on me. Just because I feel like I've at one point or another I have related to a lot of the lyrical content on this album, and the way the lyrics are delivered too is just the icing on the cake. In particular, the three tracks, and they all come in a row. The three tracks that really hit hard for me since this album has came out and still do is Animation, Conversations, and Reanimation. And these are songs that are all fairly different from each other because Animation is a lot darker and a lot more. I guess it's darker, but in a way that's a bit more full. Whereas Conversations, it's darker in a sense where it's really moody and really kind of and really almost subdued at the same time. But then you have Reanimation, which that chorus is just it sounds heartbreaking almost. And these are all tracks that have some cool outside of the box instrumentation, some really cool melodies throughout, some very unpredictable structures, and these are all huge draws to me when it comes to this, especially this style, this kind of alternative metal, prog rock hybrid sort of prog metal. The sound that's hard to label but that is very unpredictable. And I think this record is one that manages to do that and be very musically impressive while also having and packing some serious emotional weight to it. Because sometimes these prog bands, you might let me know if you agree with this. I know we've talked about like progressive death metal before and how that's also kind of a hit or miss genre for me. I feel like with a lot of progressive metal bands tend to get lost in the shuffle of trying to be very musically sound that they don't really incorporate enough emotion or relatability into their music. And my favorite prog bands are bands that can do both of those things. Like I always shout out Rollo Tomasi. They're a band that I think is like incredibly underrated progressive metal band. Like super technical stuff, but very emotional too. So I don't want to get too off task, but yeah. So this for this style, this album just hit in all the right places. So that pretty much encompasses my thoughts on my album of the year so far. Max, you mentioned you had like a couple honorable mentions. You mentioned Archspire, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Were there any other bands that you seriously considered for this list?
Yeah, the Cryptic Shift
Yeah, yeah.
album also,
Uh-huh.
yes.
Okay. Yeah. And you said Carnival was like top five, probably. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. For me, honorable mentions, an easy one is Alter Bridge. They're self-titled. I mean, just purely from the fact that it is an Alter Bridge record makes it a contender for album of the year. But I also really loved the new Failure album that dropped a few weeks ago. Location Lost. That was another. That's probably my top three so far, if I had to give a top three. But Carnival easily took it home, like just with the emotion here. It just yeah really hit home for me. So yeah, that's both of our albums of the year so far. Max went with what was it? Dream Crush? That isn't the name of it. Dream Crush by
Yes.
Mole, and then I went with Inverses by Carnival. Two fairly different records, but two records that also like maybe have a good amount of atmosphere to them. They have pack some emotion. They're dynamic records. They're unpredictable records, and despite the fact that they're so different, maybe they do have some commonalities in in that way. So yeah, that's about all we have for this video. Max, thank you so much for coming on. Anybody who's watching, if you have not subscribed to Max's channel, please do so. I've actually discovered so many rock and metal albums from Max's channel. He does his weekly albums that are dropping series, and he does a good job of progressing it. That's one thing I like about his channel. Like he just kind of switched the whole production setup, and he does a good job of kind of progressing his videos, which I think is good. It's something I try to do too. But yeah, if you have not subscribed to Max's channel, please definitely do that. He's got some great content. You'll discover some great bands. Max, once again, thank you again for coming on. I'm glad you decided to come on for this. So yeah, any
Thanks for
final
having me.
thoughts? Any final words?
For the people in the audience, you can share with us your favorite album of 2026 so far. I'm gonna read the comments, and I'm always curious to see what people like. It gives me ideas for future videos. So
Yeah,
thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Glad to be here.
yeah, good. All right, man. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, stay tuned for more rock and metal related content. Subscribe to the channel. And yeah, until next time, we'll see you guys later. Peace.